Good afternoon everybody, and this is Mentioum, and today I'm going to be showing you a quick guide in UemeU on how to create those torches which were in that recent video that I made. If you haven't seen that recent video, I'm just going to roll a little bit here, just showing what you can kind of do. I made that video in about 15 minutes just to show off the new shaders which were put on the avatar, which allow it to have this wonderful kind of shiny effect. You can see here that there's a nice shine on him, and actually if you move light sources around, there's one right there. If I switch the UI back on again, there is a light source on there, and you can see how it nicely kind of reflects off of the avatar. And it actually the new shaders allow you to change the reflectivity, the specularity, and the glossiness of each different subsection of the avatar. So if I just switch over to him and move him into a different section so you can see a little bit better, you'd actually be able to change the shininess of this section, and this section, and this section, and this section, and this section, all completely individually. So you can create a lot of you can customize your avatar to a very, very high degree. Anyway, that's not what this tutorial is about. If you want to go watch that video, I'm going to put the link in the description. What this is about is creating these. How on earth have these torches been made? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a quick tutorial which overviews how I made these. What it's going to be doing is it will show you some information about what that torch is actually made out of. It'll show, so it'll have some very, very basic tutorials on how the torch is made. It'll go over a little bit about particle effects and how that works. It'll explain how to make your world dark so that you can get cool lighting effects like this, and it'll just give you a little bit of a guide on how you work with point lights, which is obviously what that is right there. So hopefully at the end of this video you'll understand how to make cool little particle effects. You'll probably understand a little bit more about the particle system and get some ideas, hopefully, about what other cool things that you can make. You'll understand how point lights work and maybe some of the parameters you'll want to use when you're building at a scale which is similar to the avatar, and you'll understand actually how easy it is to make this. I'm also going to show you how to use the save system a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I actually already have a torch saved, but I'll show you how to save another one. This is a grouped item, so I can just save all of this exactly as it is. I'm just going to go in here now and do that. As you probably know in UemeU, you can save anything as whatever you want. Literally, I'm just typing this with one hand, so excuse the speed. Blue torch. Here we go. Man, I'm really bad at typing left-handed. So blue torch, just click save. Normally I like to line it up nice and close in the middle of the screen, because when you actually save something, it takes a screenshot and puts it there. So you see I've got the red wall torch there, and I took it from a long way away, but I just wanted this one to be nicer. And there you can see that's exactly what the object's going to look like. So I'm going to cut to another world right now, so there's nothing else in the world confusing us what's going on, and then we'll carry on with the tutorial. So welcome back guys, I hope that cut wasn't too jarring for you. So I'm in a new world here. It's obviously completely light, and I'm going to leave it light while I actually start building the torch for you. So I'm just going to load in the other one which we just saved, so blue torch. So we've got it as a reference point, so you can see. So you can actually see, like, this is what it looks like when you're actually in a completely light world. It looks a bit out saturated. Look, it's very white. It's not that clear, and things like that. And that is just because the world is too light. And you can see here, there's the point light, and there are all the parts that are associated with it. So what we've actually got here, just to go through it in a lot of detail, we've got these bits here. These we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sharp cubes with 2 different materials on it. This one's got a wood material, this one's got kind of this metal rusty material, and that's all those are, and they are, I don't even believe they're physical, so yes, that you can just run straight through them and everything. And what we've got is we've actually got an invisible object which we've just stuck over the top here, which I'm rotating it, which is got the particle effect on it, and it's literally just I think that's an octagon, and it's got the invisible material on it. We're going to build this whole thing in a second, so don't worry if you don't fully understand that it's something that I'm talking about. This is just an overview. So we'll create an object here, make it invisible, and then add a particle effect to it. And then here we've got the light source. You can see that moving around. You generally want to, just so you know in UemeU, you want to keep your effects and your lighting and things like that separate to the thing you're actually making, because the light is affected by where this object is. And let's say later you were like, oh no, it's shining off this bit. It's shining off this bit of the torch too much, and in this situation, in this world, because it's too light, it really is. So you just want to move it away. And you see, if you had actually put that light on this object here, you wouldn't be able to do that. So what you tend to do, if you want to, you modularize, or you break your builds up into different parts. Same with the particle effects. It's not actually on the object I want it as, for 2 reasons, but one reason is so that I can move it to a different location. And also, let's say I made a two-headed torch, right? I could just clone it, and then I could move the particle effect onto the other section as well, you see. But the other reason is also with the particle system, particles come out of the vertices. So if you could see the mesh of the object underneath, the sharp cube literally is just the corners. It's what you can see when you select it. The particles only come out of those points, and that wouldn't look good for a torch shape. You'd want it to be something more rounded. So I actually chose the octagon. I didn't need a sphere. The octagon's fine for a torch. You could have used a sphere if you wanted to. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do, I'm not going to create an exactly the same torch, because the easiest way to do that would be just to clone this one and then just change its colors, which is all fine and dandy, and it's what I would do if I was building a world in general. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to build something similar, except I'm going to build one which just goes on the ground, so it won't have this bit sticking out to the side, and it will allow me to show you building from the start. So let's start off with just creating the object, okay? So let's hold control just to place an object and left click on the world where you want it to appear. Oh good, it's got the wood. The reason why I had wood already selected is because the last object I selected was wood. So if you, let's say, wanted to have this particular material, it's a little bit of a trick is just to select it and then click in the world to create another object. So you can see it took the material that I had selected. If I select that one now, you'll see it will take that one. So it's it's a quick way to save yourself having to go through the menu systems, and it's something I use all the time. Okay, so let's make this the minimum width. So that's way too high. So let's just go whoop, whoop, just like that. And we've got there this kind of like this pole. Now I could make this a cylinder, but in actuality, like if that's even a word, it's not going to matter if this is a cylinder or world. The world's going to be quite dark. People aren't going to be able to see this in a lot of detail. If you wanted to make this a lot more, if you wanted to make the object a lot more, I don't know, detailed, you can. I personally like, I'm happy with it being a sharp cube. I know that people aren't really going to notice it. Now, you saw a second ago how it actually snapped back. That's because I'm using R, which is a really, really useful tool when you're in UemeU. If you hit R, it'll snap it to the nearest grid. Depending on what tool you've got selected. So if I actually scale this to here, it's going to snap it to the nearest 5 in all directions. And then you see if I put it in move mode and I snap it, it snaps it to the nearest position with a multiple of 5. Now if I clone that with 4 and then move it across and then hit R again, you'll see it'll snap it into position. And that'll work really, really well. It works really well when you need lots of objects with the same size, as you can see there. Obviously when you group it, that doesn't work, but if you keep things ungrouped, you can do some pretty cool stuff. So even if I just want this one, I want to put it above it as well, you can see that it'll line up perfectly and it'll actually continue your textures just fine. Anyway, that's a little bit of a side thing. So here we go, I've built this. I want to give it a little bit on the bottom so that it has something which it looks like it's going to stand on. So what I did there is I just cloned the original object with 4. I've switched to scale mode. Just going to make this a little bit bigger. This isn't an introductory tutorial, so if you want to know how all of those things work, you can get in touch with me another way, like through my Twitter or something like that, and say, we really want you to do a introductory tutorial, please. And I will be like, yeah, sure thing. I will pop it up as soon as possible. So let's see, what kind of, probably not that, that looks a bit silly. We need something metal, I think. Metal would be good. No, I might go with the same one that we used. Like I need like a kind of like a rusty kind of, I think that actually works pretty well on the torches, so I'll probably use that shape again. So what I've done is I've just put that shape in here. It doesn't need to be perfect because it's going to be on the floor anyway, so it'll embed a little bit. But I actually want to put that going up it in a few different locations. I want it about here as well, below the bit where it burns. So let's say you were going to use it like a hand grip, you'd put your hand on it. I think there's about right. I did exactly the same design there as well, and I think it works pretty well. So all I'm going to do is just place it there. Now, the wood on this particular texture looks a bit stretched now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, go to the materials, I'm going to go to the wood texture. If it doesn't freeze on me like it is. Wow, that was very strange. Oh, it was the world saving. So I'm just going to go to that texture. So I've just finished building this thing. It looks okay. It doesn't really look great, but I can change what's wrong with it. What's annoying me at the moment is the fact that this wood texture is very stretched. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the wood here, in here, which is down here. And if you click it again, it'll come up. It does actually tell you that in the tooltip, but a lot of people miss this. And I've made it taller, so that's the Y, and I just want to tile it a bit more. and that will make it look a little less stretched out. So there we go. That will now look a little bit less stretched, and actually it's too many on that axis, so you can actually see the texture repeating itself. So if I lower that down, there we go. That's a lot better. That now looks a little bit more like how I want it to be. And this is just a little tip. I recommend you build things with your avatar nearby, just to give yourself a good idea of scale. I think that's an acceptable scale for like a torch which is just stuck on the floor. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take, if I was building myself, I'd just take this particle source and stick it on the top there, but that's not actually what I'm going to do today. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to show you how to build it from scratch. So the way particle systems work is it creates particles from the actual vertices, like from the actual bits of the object. So all the corners, all the different places where in the geometry that shape particularly has. So I could use a sphere in this case, but really I just need anything with a reasonable number. I mean, I could use the half capsule as well, or even the capsule if I really wanted to make something, but I think that would be a little bit overkill. Teardrop would actually be a good one. I'm going to use the teardrop. You can use all sorts of them, but the point is that a sharp cube wouldn't look good. So what I'm doing, I'm just going to put that on top, and you see, because once again I just did it automatically, I didn't even think about it. The last thing I selected was that was the invisible object there. It took the material from it, so now this is invisible. So if I switch to play mode, you see you can't see it. For those who don't know about the invisible material, it's here. Scrolling up, it's there, it's that one there. So you see there's the object, but if I do that, now it's the invisible material, and if I switch, it's completely invisible. Something I like to do when I'm using invisible materials is to set them to bright pink, so then they're easier to see. I haven't actually done it on this torch because when I was recording I didn't want them as visible in build mode, but here you can see that I've got this kind of semi-transparent object much more clearly. So first things first, I'm going to turn it upside down because I don't want the pointy bit on the top, I want the pointy bit on the bottom. Actually, no, do I? No, I don't, actually. If I'm just thinking about how the particles are going to come off of this. So if you think I'm going to be making so all the particles come sort of up in a flame shape. So what I want to do is I'm going to make that a bit small. I'm going to scale uniformly by holding Alt. So I've switched to scale mode. I'm going to hold Alt and then just press S, and it'll scale in all directions at the same time, just to get it down to a kind of more manageable size. I'm also actually going to turn it to a more normal material so I can see the shape of it more clearly. Okay, let me just turn my flight speed down so it looks less jerky in the video. And then I'm just going to place it in. Now you want it to be a bit bigger than the actual torch, so let's just make it kind of the right shape for the flame. Okay, so you got to think, remember the flames are all going to come out of the verts of the actual object, so you want it to kind of fit the shape as if the flames were coming off of it. So that's about right, because flames are a little bit like invisible around the wick generally, because it's actually not burning the wick, it's burning the wax. But that's another lesson, and for those interested in science, I recommend you look up like how candles work. That's quite cool, and also makes you realize that it's really easy to make a candle. I don't recommend children playing with fire, so don't. So do it in UemeU instead, much safer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make it back invisible again so that the particle effect is more obvious. And I'm going to go special effects, particle effects, and I'm going to add it, and you're just going to get this rubbishness stuff from the start, and you'll see it's just going straight through the world. So what we actually need to do first is we're going to change this in UemeU. The default, it currently has something. There are lots of effects here. Don't be scared. Just play with the ones you know or need to use. So first off, we're going to change this down in particle physics by default right now. It actually should be changed in the next version. There's gravity on. Just turn that to 0, and then you'll see it's still going down. I generally like to put damping on, and what that does is it slows particles down over time. It's like, you know, if you drop a ball into like something which is like syrupy or something like that, it'll slow the ball down over time. So that's what that does. Be very careful, it's very strong. If you have a high damping, the particles won't move at all. It'll just kind of, as you see, it's because it's so syrupy, it just can't move them. But you'll see here, like, that's what it kind of does. You'll see it kind of slows them down over time, so it's like boo, it's like they're dropping into something syrupy. But I know that 0.5 is about right for what I'm going to be doing in a second. Now the reason why all these are hurtling downwards at a ridiculous rate is because it starts with an initial local velocity, and that local velocity is really cool when you want the particles to go in the direction according to the vertices on the object, and that can be very useful if, for example, you wanted to, like, if I rotate this, like I wanted to make like a spout or something, and you see if I then turned gravity on, that would actually kind of be like a kind of a spout coming out to the side. But what I want isn't that. What I actually want is something which just kind of shoots up in one direction. Flames are always going to go up, pretty much. So I'm going to turn the initial local velocity off, and now, lo and behold, you'll see that this object now has all of its particles appearing down there. It's interesting that one's not appearing up there, but that could be to do with the fact that there just aren't quite enough particles. So I'm going to make that 200 particles, and then hit the lifetime just to reset it. So there we go, that's more like it. They're appearing everywhere now. There weren't enough particles to fill the whole object. So now, what I'm going to do is, I want a lifetime of, I would say a flame needs a lifetime of about 2 seconds. So what that means is that a particle, once it appears, it will last in the world, live in the world for 2 seconds, and then disappear. Particle count is how many particles there are, and emission rate is, you can kind of like make it so things pulse and stuff by playing with emission rate, you see? So it'll like pulse, but we want it all the time. Fire burns constantly, unless you want to make like a windy environment or something like that, and then you could start playing with emission on different candles and stuff like that. And you could do some stuff like that. What we actually want now is a initial velocity, and that's a global velocity. So that means if you say up, it goes up no matter where you've got it. So what we want is, we want this to go up a little bit. Whoopsie, not on the x-axis, make that 0. On the y-axis. Now, min and max value basically means when a particle gets created on any one of these vertices, it will be given an initial velocity between the minimum and the maximum at random. Well, it'll be given an average over it. And what that'll mean is that if you want it to go down and up, if the minimum is, there we go, you can see that it's actually doing something there. If the minimum is a negative value, it'll go in the opposite direction. And if it's a positive value, it'll go the other way. So if I say x, right, minus x is that way, plus x is that way, and it'll go in that direction always. So look, if I make it a minus x, you'll see that it's actually all going to the right. Let's make it go to the right. So you see the max is 23, and if I made the negative minus thingy, minus 12, some will go that way and some will go that way. But if I put them both on the same side, you just get ones going at different speeds. So if I have something going at 7, so you can see there's slower ones and there are faster ones. So that's why there are 2 sets, minimum and maximum. If you did just set one of them, you'll just get that one speed. No, you'll get an average between the two. So if you actually want all the particles to go exactly the same, you set them both to be exactly the same number. So if you set that to 3 and you set that to 3, you'll see that all the particles are moving at exactly the same speed. But that's not what a flame does. We need them to be different. And also we don't need them to be sideways. We want them to be vertical. So I'm just going to set a value between 1 here and 3 there. Okay, so you can see here now, that is way, way, way too high, right? We don't want that. And it's also moving way too fast. Like fire does not move. Fire does not move that quickly, right? So I'm going to make this 0.1 and make this 0.3. Now that's a little bit more like it. You can see here it's kind of got like a bit of a flame feel to it. I feel like there might be a few too many particles, but we'll make a decision on that in a minute when we play with when we change the color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to color. So close up particle velocity in physics. I recommend keeping these closed when you're not working on them, just so you don't have to scroll around so much and it's a little less confusing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go particle color. Now, the way that the particle color system works is that, you know how I said the particles have a timeline, they have a lifetime of 2 seconds. Over 2 seconds, it will go through these colors all the way. So if you wanted something to always be one color, you would set both, the minimum number of colors you can have for a particle is 2. You just set them both to the same color, okay? And the relative time is the point at which it will get to that. So if I set this to pink, it will start pink, and then it will end at 0, it'll be pink, and then at 1, it'll be white. So it'll blend between those two colors over that time period between 0 and 1, which is actually the lifetime of 2 seconds. So at 1 second, in this case, it will be exactly halfway between those two colors. So if I make this green, so it's a little bit more yellow or something, so it's easier to see, you'll see it's actually changing there. But now if I go like this, you'll see that the yellow is getting closer and closer down to where the pink is. Do you see here? So it'll blend all the way through it. So, and this gives you a huge amount of control over the colors of particles. This is overly saturated, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to change the particle sizes. So I'm going to lower it down to that, a minimum and maximum of 0.2. That's a little bit more like it. Obviously that is the wrong color, so we'll go back to the color section. We'll leave it open for now because we might play with that a little bit in a second. We want it to start off, let's say we're going to go with a red flame. We want to start off as like a deep red, so burgundy, See now it's already gone like really orangey because it's blending between these two colors. And then the top color, we probably want it to be maybe like a paler red, kind of like. So you can see there's like a really nice kind of fiery effect there. And it's kind of blending out towards the top. And it's coming out of the vertices. You can see the invisible object here. But in play mode, that invisible object isn't visible at all, as you can see. And the shape is quite nice as well because of the shape of the original object we've got. It's that original flame shape, you see? Whereas that one isn't. It's that more square shape, and that's because of the original shape of the object. We can do that if we squish this down. It will become a lot more kind of rounded, as you can see there, which I actually think I prefer a little bit to the other one. It might be, I think that's pretty cool. It's difficult to tell because we still haven't put the light on, and also we're still in a light world. So I'm going to leave that like that. I think that's enough for now. Remember, the things that we looked at were, we turned off the gravity in particle physics. We set the particle colors, and I explained blending here. There's also alpha values. It works the same way. Don't worry, the default is good for flames. You can play with those if you like. They work the same way as colors. It'll blend between the levels of opacity. And in particle velocity, we turned off local velocity because we didn't want it going in the directions according to the object's geometry. We wanted it always going up, so we put it just on initial velocity. Okay, don't worry about delta movement. I'll do that in a more in-depth particle tutorial. The particle system is the most complicated part of UemeU. It's so powerful. In theory, like I know it's actually possible, you can make rivers which actually flow down over landscape using this particle system. It's incredibly powerful. We are going to be making it easier to use for beginners though, without removing, obviously, because it's one of UemeU's ethoses, without removing the detail which allows you to do anything you want, because that is the true power of UemeU. It's what sets us apart from other sandbox games. We didn't touch anything in emission, and we played with particle size just to make it a little bit smaller so we can kind of see the individual bits and bobs. Right. So next section is lighting. Hooray! Once again, we want not to put it on the actual object. So if I put it on this actual object, this bit will be dark, you see, because it won't actually light it up. You want the light next to it. So what we're going to do is just get a sharp cube, because we all know that's what we want. I'm just going to very quickly select this object here so that I get the same material color, because I want it to be invisible. Just like that. Now, the thing about these is it doesn't actually matter how big they are. Like, this can be any size you want, and it won't really matter. I tend to make them the minimum size. So I just make them the minimum cube size, and then I leave them that big. And then, as I also said, if I wasn't recording, if I was just building, I'd make it pink so it's easier to see. I'm probably thinking about adding a way for people to be able to highlight these, so you can press a button and they all show up in your world, and it's really easy to see them all. But at the moment, this is the best thing you can do for it. I'm just going to place it somewhere, like, it can be anywhere. It's not associated with that at all right now. And now what we're going to do is special effects again, and I've got this object here selected, and put a light on it. So now if we go into here, whoa, super bright, crazy bright light by default. So that works fine generally if you're doing like a light up here. Like, that's an alright light. That could be a room light. That armor's very shiny. And I've put it way up there. So if you're in a very, very massively built house, it's just a bit bright, basically. And the intensity by default is 1 and the range is 10. If you have a look at this one, it's actually got a intensity of 1 and a range of 5, and it's blue. The less bright the color, the less intense the light is. So if we actually made this, so we leave the intensity at 1 and we set this to 5 because we don't want it to go very far. You'll see how it basically changes the range of the light. It'll change how far it goes. So you can see you can be pretty mental with it. So 5 will be fine. And the light color, we want it to kind of be like a red. Whoop, that's way too strong. We want it to be kind of like a red color, so it matches the torch. And if I just put that about there, what I would actually do in this case is I'm not going to put it to the side. The reason why I put that to the side was because this goes in the wall, and I wanted it to look good in that regard. But what I'd actually normally do is I'd put this directly above the object, so like this. I could actually put it just above, like in there. I'm not going to put it right inside of it. I'm going to put it above it, so it's easier for me to select at a later date. Okay? Yeah, that's centered enough. That's close enough. That'll do. Right. Okay, now that's done. So I'm just going to select it, group it, and that's done. Now that's it. That's done. That is now my lamp, my light. That's not quite centered, and that really is annoying me. Do that again. So there we go. That is now my light, and I can clone that, and then I can use it over and over and over and over. And that object can now be saved. I'm going to save it, actually. So what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to make the world dark, just to show you how this effect is actually really, really working, because it's difficult to appreciate it properly in this situation. So go to the world, open the weather menu. I'm going to set it to midnight, so now it's nighttime. I'm going to... This is also far too complicated. We're planning on simplifying this whilst keeping all of these effects available to you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make it completely clear, because that gets rid of all the clouds. So you'll see they'll blend out now, and we'll get a nice sort of space and nighttime effect. I always do love watching the clouds fade out. When the weather system works, we've got a long way to go with it. It is very cool. And you see how it's still really pretty bright. Now, that's both a bug, which we're aware of and we're fixing, to do with the brightness of the light. But you can change that by just changing the angle of the sun so it shines horizontally. Like, we're eventually going to make it so you can make its intensity like really low. See, it doesn't let me actually change the sun's intensity, which is obviously not good, because it means you can't make a completely dark world right now, which is very frustrating. But you see how when you change the angle, it actually changes the angle of the moon as well. So I'm just going to put that over there. And then these here, ambient light at night, you can make that black. It'll make it darker. And there we go. And now we've got a very, very dark world, as you can see. But you see how the avatar has this white light on him? That is because of this angle thing. So if I actually rotated that a bit, you'll see that actually rotates on him, if you can tell. But that bug will be sorted very, very soon. The reason why this isn't an official tutorial for UemeU is because I'm talking about all of these things. It's not organized or anything like that. But you can see that these work just fine. So now that I've got that over here, I'm going to take a picture of it because I'm going to use it in my world. So I'm just going to line it up. There we go. There's my torch. And I'm just going to go to save object. Save, and I'm going to go red, and I'm going to call it torch first. Torch freestanding, because it's all on its own. It doesn't go on the wall, and it's red. You can use whatever naming scheme you want. I just use that so I can find things. Something must be selected. Oh, that was dumb of me. Whoopsie. So that's that, and I just go torch red freestanding. Freestanding. Like, I obviously would have the picture to help me, but I prefer having a good thing, so I can search for torch later. We're adding search to the item system because although I keep my item system organized, we want people to be able to organize it within the game. So there we go. That was a very long-winded and open discussion about the power of things that you can do in UemeU. As you can see, this torch could obviously be improved still. We could add a lot of other things to it, but that's pretty cool. So thank you very much for watching. This has been Mentioum, the lead developer on UemeU. I'm doing this on my own channel because it's not really a properly edited together tutorial. It's more just me kind of building and talking about how things work as I go along. But if you like the look of UemeU and you haven't already picked it up, you should get over and buy it on UemeU.com. The game's selling for £10.99. Just type it into Google if you want to know what that is in dollars or whatever your respective currency is. Payments could be through PayPal, so anywhere that PayPal works, you can use it too. Obviously, you can just use a normal credit card with PayPal too. If you have any problems, please just get in touch. Again, I hope this has helped all the users, current and future. And please don't hesitate to get in touch with either myself at Mentioum on Twitter, or if you have any general questions about UemeU, you can always get in touch with our support team, which is often indeed myself as well, at support@UemeU.com. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this was an enjoyable experience for all of you. Goodbye.